All right, good morning, everybody. I see we have about 20 people here. I think we had a few more registered. So we always like to give a few minutes for folks to join. But we can get started in a minute or two. Looks like we still have some folks joining. Let's see, maybe I will share my video for fun. Sometimes it's nice to see a face. Hi, everybody. My name is Teresa Barreras, and I am the manager of our neighborhood business district work at the Office of Economic Development. So we're here today at our final info session, although we could schedule another one if folks wanted that. But this is an information session for the Neighborhood Economic Recovery Fund. And we will be here for an hour. Have we started recording yet?
Yes, we have.
Okay, great. Seems like some folks are still jumping on. So just a few housekeeping items. We are recording this webinar and it will be available on our website afterwards. When you want to ask a question, the best way is to put it in the Q&A box. There's also a chat box, and that box goes just to the presenters. So we will be monitoring both and we can respond to your questions, but if you put them in the Q&A, then everyone can see them. So that's helpful. And we will also email the slides afterwards for you. So welcome. Today we're going to talk about the Neighborhood Economic Recovery Grant, go over the guidelines and some of the eligible activities. We will also talk about the Flux grant system, which is an online grant management program that you use to apply for the grant. And then we'll do a little information about some of our other OED resources that are coming soon. First of all, just to provide a little background about the funds that we are using for this program. They're coming from the Seattle Rescue Plan. It's about $128 million that the city received, which is just one, they call it a tranche, one amount of funding that came in. Here are some high-level descriptions of what the funding is going toward. There's $49 million going to housing and homelessness. There's $23 million that is funding this program, and it's going for community and small business recovery. There's also a lot of money going to some other great programs, community well-being, assistance in programming, and reopening city programs and services. So of this $23 million that is going for community and small business recovery, here's a little breakdown of that. About $7.5 million will be coming for both small business direct financing and grants. So if you're familiar with our small business stabilization fund that we ran last year, that will be coming again, maybe in a somewhat different form. And in addition to the stabilization fund, we will also have some new financing programs available. We'll have a lot more business technical assistance available in a lot of different kinds of resources around that. We'll have, actually, I think this might be 2 million. We were, I think at one point thinking it was 3, but maybe it's 2. I'm not sure. Some of these numbers are in flux, but we will have some tenant improvement grants. There was some funding that is going toward downtown recovery, for workforce training and employment, and then some funding that went to the Office of Arts and Culture, $3 million for arts and culture nonprofits and community organizations, and then $5.5 million for neighborhood economic recovery, which is providing the funds for this grant. Our intended results from this program are for neighborhoods and communities to rebound from the impacts of COVID-19 and thrive. and also for entrepreneurs and small businesses to recover from the impacts of COVID-19, stabilize and grow their businesses. There's about, for this fund, this application round, there is 1.2 million available. The minimum award is $10,000, maximum of $100,000. The contracts could start as early as November or December, depending on your projects. And we are saying that we want your contract to be in place by May 1st of 2022. So there is time after an award to, if you need to figure out some of the details of how the contract is going to work, who's going to hold it. But there is a limit to that. We can't keep your award for longer than that 6-month period. And then it also has to be spent and billed and completed by December 15th of 2023. So that'll give you a couple years to get the projects done. Now the eligible projects that, and we'll go in more detail in the next few slides, but the main important point to note is that you need to make a direct link from the impacts of the pandemic that your neighborhood experienced or your community experienced to how your project supports you to recover from those impacts, or your neighborhood to recover. So that's really important. This funding is COVID relief funding coming from the federal government. And so it is required that it's actually improving or helping to recover from direct impacts that were felt from COVID. So now I'll go through some examples of the kinds of activities that are eligible or that we're thinking about in terms of what would help a neighborhood recover. So first, this category of public and commercial space activation. And there are a lot of different examples of this, from some retail pop-ups, or activating vacant commercial spaces, to activating public spaces like art or public art or other kinds of activities in the public space, or what we've seen a lot with the outdoor seating areas for businesses so that folks can feel safer eating outside, and businesses can stay open and still serve customers. So those are some examples. There could also be vendor markets or events and other kinds of things. These are just examples of the kinds of activities that you could probably make a direct link between COVID impacts and recovery. Another thing that we've seen growth in is really thinking about businesses thinking about improving their digital resources, and we call it digital equity, because a lot of businesses haven't had this opportunity to focus and build their websites and social media presence. And so a lot of neighborhoods have been helping their local businesses improve their web presence, and create local marketplaces online, like Essential Southeast Seattle. Here is an example where the neighborhood organization helped start up this website so that businesses can sell through online channels as folks were in lockdown. So that's another possibility, and a lot of different variations of helping businesses either with point of sale systems or other kinds of online support. Now, one thing about this federal funding is it's not allowed to pay for marketing. So a lot of times when we're doing work in neighborhoods, a lot of the small businesses get support with marketing. So although we can't do direct advertising kinds of purchases, there are things that you can do around communications, which is very important as well, from building websites, helping to build up social media platforms and work, creating contact databases of businesses so that you can do newsletters and other kinds of information. Sharing resources that are coming online has been very important, and sharing information with your community and local businesses about what's happening and what they can access. So there are a lot of things that you can do, and a lot of things that our neighborhoods have been doing to support their local businesses and to also communicate with their communities. Here are some examples of physical improvements and beautification that a lot of neighborhoods have been doing, and here's some great examples. Murals, especially on all those boarded up windows, the murals have been a really great feature to help folks feel a little bit more hopeful. Some outdoor lighting to help customers and these outdoor public seating areas. We're creating and building these outdoor public seating areas. Just a great example from Ballard to have some shelter from our rainy season, but still allow folks to patronize their local businesses. Another physical improvement is cleaning, and here you can see some examples of painting out graffiti, doing sidewalk cleaning or garbage pickup. You know, a lot of times during lockdown and while things were closed, garbage started to accumulate more than maybe it had in the past. And so those kinds of things can be tied to COVID, and having some extra support to get things cleaned up as we can start opening businesses again is something that you could ask for funding for. Also, there are a lot of things you could do around community safety, from delivering PPE supplies, personal protective equipment, to local businesses. A lot of neighborhoods have been working on vaccine pop-ups and trying to support those efforts. You could do a commercial block watch, and the CEPTED, which is community prevented, crime prevention through environmental design, sorry, is what CEPTED means. And it's a way of designing outdoor spaces to deter crime, or helping your businesses learn about shoplift prevention. I know there have been a lot of challenges with that during this time as well. So there are a lot of things around community safety that you could think about that could help your community recover from COVID. There's also outreach and technical assistance to your local businesses. And here you can see a photo of some of the community liaisons that we work with. This is a program from the Department of Neighborhoods that provides folks who can do in-language outreach to businesses. And this is a service that we provide. And so let us know if you're interested in accessing that resource, but you can also help fund it yourself or fund your own kind of business outreach to help businesses learn about, especially with all this new technical assistance and new resources that we have coming, help businesses learn and access a lot of those resources. All right, now I am going to turn it over to Heidi Hall, one of our colleagues here, who will talk about the next few slides.
Thanks, Teresa. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So Heidi Hall, I'm on the Neighborhood Business District team at the Office of Economic Development, and Cher Omlog, our colleague, is on the line as well, manning the questions in the chat. So wanted to touch base on the review criteria, the funding criteria. There's 3 key criteria for the Neighborhood Economic Recovery funding. The first one is equity. So projects serving high COVID impacted neighborhoods and or projects focusing support for Black, Indigenous, people of color, or BIPOC businesses and community members. Second key criteria would be neighborhood economic recovery. So projects helping businesses and communities recover economically from COVID impacts and stimulating economic activity. And then the third key criteria is community supported. So projects directed by and directly benefiting the community. And so proposals will be reviewed and scored against these key criteria. And for anyone that there's the scoring guide is actually an appendix in the grant guidelines if anyone would like to reference that. Next slide. So the city did an analysis of different data points to understand areas that were highly impacted through COVID. And so this map here shows a compilation of 4 different data points that were combined based on census tract data. So the first is the Race and Social Equity Index, which combines, race and ethnicity and other demographics with health outcomes and a few other key points. Displacement Risk Index, which looks at areas at high risk of displacement and access to opportunity, and those are both managed through our Office of Planning and Community Development. And then layered on that, COVID case rates per capita from the Public Health Department. And then business impact data, really understanding where low-wage jobs are in the city and where the highest changes in low-wage jobs were between 2019 and 2020. So this will help us understand areas that were highly impacted and will be one factor that's considered under that equity review criteria. Next slide. And then the application timeline, Teresa alluded to this a little bit at the beginning of the presentation, but wanted to flag here kind of where we're at and where we're going. So the RFP opened August 26th. It's open for 6 weeks. We've done a couple of information sessions. We're here September 21st on the 3rd information session. In addition, any of the neighborhood business district team at OED is available at any time to talk with you, answer questions, help you talk through your proposal ideas, and you'll see all of our contact information on the website. October 7th is the deadline to submit by 5 p.m. We are using an online grant portal, which we'll walk through and do a tutorial on shortly. Again, any issues, troubleshooting, give us a call. There's also a video online about how to log in and create a user account. And then we anticipate being able to announce awards in early November. And the grant period can be flexible in terms depending on your particular project needs. But we do need expenses can start once you have a contract. And the latest it can go is December 15th, 2023. That's when everything needs to be finalized, final invoices in, so that we can do those are the federal guidelines for the funding. So that's about 2 years, but it could be a shorter grant period as well, if that makes sense for your project. And next slide. So just here's the information sessions. Again, these are going to be, I think there were some questions in the chat. The presentation and the recording will be posted on our website for each session. Next slide. I just wanted to touch quickly on a couple of best practices as we're thinking through kind of a lot of our projects. So again, the intent of this funding is to support community-based solutions for neighborhood economic recovery. Communities, you all really know what your impacts have been, what your needs are, and this is an opportunity to really support and get those solutions off the ground to help your neighborhood and your community members and businesses recover economically. Also, a lot of folks have been reaching out, and so helping to coordinate and connect with other neighborhood partners to align proposals or minimize duplication wherever possible. Sometimes it makes sense to have multiple proposals coming through. Just talking to folks and kind of understanding what some of the different ideas are in the neighborhood. And also thinking about leveraging different resources and expertise for your neighborhood, whether that's the community expertise that's there, other partners and projects that are underway. And then I did want to flag as well that these are federal funding, so there are some documentation and reporting requirements that are part of the funding, and we will go through that and help you with that. But just wanted folks to know that as they're going into this. Next slide. And so I'll touch, just so folks are aware, we'll touch kind of briefly on what some of the key requirements are so that folks understand. As Teresa mentioned, these are federal COVID relief recovery funds, something called the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, if folks have heard that acronym. And so as federal funding, there are some kind of parameters for how you can spend the funding, which is known as the Uniform Administrative Requirements. So it's a little bit of a mouthful, but we bulleted a couple of the key things here. One is needing to track your time and expenses for the grant. So having so if you're charging staff time to the grant, you'd have to be able to kind of show that staff time either on a timesheet that you create or a payroll report or something like that. And again, we can work with you to figure out what makes most sense for your organization. Because if you're not tracking this already, it might be that the staff has a timesheet, for example. If you're an organization receiving a lot of federal funding, an award could bump you up over that 750,000 mark, which would be a trigger for an audit that an organization would have to do. So just a couple things to know about. Something called Davis-Bacon applies, which is for construction projects. So if you are doing kind of a physical improvement or a facade project or something in the public realm that involves kind of construction sorts of expenses, there is a requirement to pay prevailing wage. Again, we can help you navigate all of that, but just so you know. And then a couple of things that are not allowed. Teresa already touched on the advertising. You can't use the federal funds to buy alcohol, to pay for entertainment, and for capital expenditures over $5,000 per unit. And again, if any of your projects touch any of these pieces, we can kind of talk you through what that might look like. And there have been a lot of questions in prior sessions around the entertainment piece. And I think that, you know, it would be different if there's kind of an art or activation component as part of a neighborhood activation strategy versus kind of paying for a show or underwriting a show or something like that. So there's a couple of nuances depending on your project. Next slide. Okay, and I'll touch on the application questions, and then we can take a pause and just to get some questions from folks and think about what some of your questions and proposal ideas are that you've been exploring. So just in general, always recommend folks review the funding guidelines and requirements, and again, reach out if you've got questions. So this is a good start here today. The full grant guidelines and application instructions are on the website link that's at the end of this this presentation. The application instructions has all the details on the different questions and the FAQs. And then one thing we recommend to folks, especially if they're not used to using the grant portal, is maybe fill out the application questions in a separate sheet. There's like 4 main questions, like in a Word document, especially if you're working with other folks or collaboratively with other staff or volunteers in your community. You can fill out those questions there and then copy them into the grant portal when you're ready to submit. And then Teresa will walk through in a minute a tutorial about how to register on the online grant portal and do the application, but there's the link here. Okay, next slide. And so there's really 4 key questions for the Neighborhood Economic Recovery Fund proposal. The first is really describing what have been the key impacts from the pandemic to your community, your neighborhood, your organization. So what is the problem or the issue that you're trying to solve with your project? So, you don't need to have super detailed, data. We've got a lot of the hard data in terms of like case rates and things like that, but what have been those impacts? How have they been felt in your community and neighborhood? And really describe those. And that will lead to what your proposal is trying to accomplish. And so that gets that link that the funding's required in terms of the COVID relief and recovery. The second key question is your project summary. So how will your proposal address the impacts from COVID and contribute to the equitable recovery results that are described here, that were described earlier? And I really want to emphasize the being as intentional and focused as you can be on how your project proposal will focus support for Black, Indigenous, and people of color business owners or community members. These communities have been hit the hardest and have been hit disproportionately through the pandemic. And so, a strong proposal will have a very intentional focus on supporting those community members. The next slide. And then the third kind of key question is around community supported. So how is your you or your organization representative of the community that you're seeking to serve and what's kind of been your work in that community and who are some of the key partners that are touching this work. And then the budget, there's a budget form in there that Teresa will show that has some pre-filled fields, and then you can add your own. And then a budget narrative. And I would really encourage folks to use the budget narrative to describe the costs, because they're kind of high level. And so you can describe in a little more detail what those costs are. And then on the documents, you have the option, it's not required, but you can attach any additional documents that could support your application. So if you've got, if you've got additional detail about kind of the projects that you're proposing, or kind of about the impacts or any plans that you've put together, depends on where your project is and what kind of project you're proposing. But you're welcome to attach additional documents there, and that can be a place, since the questions are pretty short, that's a place to add additional detail. And I will go ahead and I think pause there. So we'll pause there and open it up for any questions that folks have before we go into more detail on the online grant tutorial. And I believe you can put questions in the Q&A, and if anyone would also like to unmute themselves, they're welcome to ask a question as well. Sherry, are there any questions we should flag in here? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Heidi. Hi, everyone. I was just about to respond to Nikki's question, but I do think it would be great to answer the question in front of everyone. It is that question around entertainment and nonprofit performing arts organizations wanting to fund productions that do benefit high impacted communities and can spur economic activity, but it is a production. So curious about is that eligible? Is it considered entertainment?
Is this Nikki's question?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So this is, I think, an interesting one. So I think, again, just being clear about the impacts that you're responding to with your project. So, is the performance, I'm looking at this again, funding for anything called like a specific production, would it be like a publicly open, publicly accessible production, or are you charging for tickets? That might be something. You are putting creative workers to work, so that's something you could talk about as well. But if it's part of like an activation strategy or bringing people into the neighborhood, those are some things you can talk about. It's probably less useful to like subsidize or underwrite a specific production that you would then charge for. That might be a better fit for the Office of Arts and Culture grants that are coming out to support organizations. And Teresa, you've had a little more experience with this, so I welcome you to jump in if there's anything that I misrepresented.
Yeah, I think this is a tricky one because the federal guidelines do say that we're not allowed to spend funding on entertainment, but they don't really go into a lot of detail about what that means. And so if we stretch too far into something, then in the future an auditor might disagree with our interpretation, and then we will get in trouble. But I think, as Heidi was mentioning, we're trying to be as flexible as possible to try to be to help work with you on what really is needed in your community and what kind of recovery is needed. And so we just have to make a very clear argument about what the issue was and how this is helping to recover economically from that COVID impact. And so if it's just like Heidi was saying, we're trying to parse it out a little bit. If it's just a show and we're going to make money on a show, great. That's probably not going to be as strong as if you could make some arguments around, like Heidi mentioned, putting artists back to work, addressing something really challenging that has been faced in the community. It kind of gets to how we're defending it and how we're describing it. And so yes, I think you make the case, or you mention that creating outdoor seating areas is allowable, yes, because that is helping businesses recover. It's helping them stay open, serve customers. I mean, that's what they need to do in order to keep operating. is have outdoor seating so customers feel safe, and at some points they weren't allowed to be open indoors. And so those are very clear COVID recovery strategies that help the economy, and that's why we flag those as being examples.
Right, and I see another question here that might be helpful for folks from Judy. Hey, Judy, about how we define community neighborhoods. So she's working with Seattle Rideshare Drivers Association located on MLK in Rainier Valley. And so they're looking at a project proposal to support drivers impacted by COVID and build up a center to offer some support. So I think a project can span more than one neighborhood. You know, they are neighborhood-based strategies. So in this case, it sounds like it would be kind of anchored in Rainier Valley. So that would be the area or the region that you would focus on for your proposal. But again, it seems like there's a really good link there with, you know, COVID impacts, and also thinking forward-looking about, you know, a more equitable recovery and more support for those workers moving forward. So there are instances where projects might span more than one neighborhood or work in a couple of neighborhoods in Southeast Seattle, for example, and that's totally fine.
So I don't wish to overstep, but I can't see any kind of cue for the, could I go ahead and ask a question?
Yes.
Hello? Okay. So, you know, I'm listening to this. I'm trying to be as open-minded as possible. You know, in the Seattle Times, I read, you know, 60,000 people are behind on their rent and possibly facing eviction. It seems to me that any business that provides employment and helps people pay their rent is, you know, going to do the most good.
Yeah, so supporting small businesses is definitely one strategy to support employment. I don't have the data offhand, but I know you know, a lot of people are employed with small businesses.
Right now, and it doesn't. So I'm thinking about a pop-up in South Lake Union, and I live up in Fremont. Okay, so South Lake Union isn't exactly my neighborhood, but as you said, that these can sort of overlap. And so South Lake Union, you know, I mean, it's just once the workers come back, it's just a gold mine. And so that really is my focus. And you know, that's where I would be able to employ the most people.
So Michael, what we can do, so you're looking at a pop-up, and we also work with, you know, a partner, the South Lake Union Chamber of Commerce. That might be someone to connect with as well as you're exploring the project idea.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so I'd be happy to work with you offline and make that connection.
Great, that sounds wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Hey there. One, thank you so much for giving this presentation. I've been looking forward to it, and also thank you so much for putting up the YouTube videos on there so I can review it later. My name is Yes Segura. I'm founder of Smash the Box. It's an urban planning and design firm, and just like to note that I'm first generation El Salvadorian American and also openly transgender man. So me and my friend, she also has a small business. We haven't had the opportunity to look at office spaces in general, but we're thinking we have found something, and we're wondering, you know, since we haven't had brick and mortar in the past, could we use this as an opportunity to look at property and within North Beacon Hill, which is highly populated with the Latino community and whatnot, and see what we could do with that. If that's, I don't know if that's a vague question, but yeah,
No, it's. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead, finish.
Yeah, if the money could be used towards helping to pay for the property in order for us, similar to what Queer the Land has done, and where there's a group of people that go in and purchase property that, you know, traditionally is just purchased by one person, you know. So it's more equitable in the long run.
Yeah, so I'll let my colleagues jump in as well on this, but so you're looking at an individual business, right? Finding space for the Smash the Box, looking at a particular neighborhood, if I'm understanding right.
Yes, but also her
Okay.
business too. So it would almost be like a shared co-working space,
Mhm.
but businesses that have already been identified that are queer, transgender, and or BIPOC.
I don't
Chair
think,
Teresa, go
yeah,
ahead.
I don't think this fund would
Yeah.
be used for purchasing property, just because we're not allowed to make capital expenditures over $5,000. So I'm guessing that it's going to cost more than that to purchase something in Seattle. So we do have other programs coming around business financing, you know, subsidized loans, and other grants as well, the Small Business Stabilization Fund grants. And those are going to be a little bit different this time. So I don't know if it's going to be the same lottery system as it was in the past. So that could be a little bit different. Definitely take a look at that again, even if you looked at it before. And I think stay in touch with us on these new things that are coming soon. And also, if there are other aspects of your project that that would be eligible, like potentially activation or other kinds of community-based events or things, then that could be a better fit for this funding source. But definitely, I hope this doesn't discourage your idea, because there are going to be a lot more resources available for businesses, directly for businesses, that are just getting put together right now and will be coming out in the next few months.
So keep in touch with us.
Okay.
So we can help work through this. And
Thank
I know we also work with partners in Beacon Hill that might know of some different spaces that are available. So that's also just in terms of like a relationship building and starting to make some connections around that concept. There could be some things to do there.
Okay, thank you. That definitely saves us a lot of time into, you know, now not applying for this, but maybe looking into some different avenues for this. Thank you.
Hi, Heidi. There's a question in the Q&A that I thought would be good for everyone to hear, but also not quite sure how to answer. The question is, can the funds be used to create the structure which allows an organization to stabilize its workforce? And then Faduma, if you have any additional things to add to that, please feel free to unmute yourself.
What do you mean by stabilize? Stabilize the workforce. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that was a question in the Q&A. And so I thought that warranted more of a conversation. Because let's see. Oh, okay, Faduma, I will unmute you just a second.
I'm just trying to follow it, and I don't know what she means by
Okay, so Faduma, I've gone ahead and unmuted you. So can you try talking?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Heidi. There's a particular organization that works with women, BIPOC women particularly, through a relationship of contracting. However, because of the pandemic, workflow have sort of ebbed and flowed, and they're trying to set up a structure that allows them to turn their contractors into full-time employees. However, this is a new organization. They just acquired a building and they're doing much of the operational work. They're happy that they survived through the pandemic, but right now it's sort of, how do we become a functional organization that allows them to turn their contractors into actually full-time employees in order to retain them in the long term.
I love this idea. I'm so interested in this myself. And, you know, I believe that the city worked with Uber to sort of go from contractor to employee. And, you know, it's so expensive to hire someone these days. And so I'm very interested in this myself.
Yeah, and so we are as well. Our main aim is to create the models and the structure that allows organizations, specifically those who serve on our PIPOC, to transform themselves into sort of a thriving organization that can hire within community and stay sustainable within community. The revenue sources are there. The structure is missing for the organization to adopt in a way that minimizes the cost of transition. And also, usually when going through transition, you also tend to lose individuals. So they're hoping to accomplish all that without spending too much money and without losing any of their contractors.
And Fuduma, this is a nonprofit, right?
Yeah, this is a nonprofit.
That's a really good question. Teresa, Sharon, if you've got thoughts. I'm also wondering about some of the other community stabilization resources. I'm trying to think what's out there.
Well, I do think that this bears some exploration. I mean, I think it's a great idea. And this is where one thing I forgot to emphasize when I was talking about eligible projects is other. There is a place for other ideas that maybe we haven't described it on our documents or slides, but if you have a great idea that, you know, in serving your community, you know that this is something that was an impact and something that could really help you rebound economically. I mean, this sounds to me like it could fit under that other category. So if it's, I don't quite know what you mean by structure, but if what you need is to hire a consultant to help you develop that structure, if there's somebody, you know, who has that expertise that you know of, or whatever the actual work is, I think that would be helpful for us to understand. But I think this could be a great, I mean, I don't know for sure because I don't know all the details or exactly what you mean, but if you could write that up, I think that could be possible. And also it could be there could be other resources that we have coming online to help as well. I'm not just depending on what exactly it looks like, because we will have some subsidized business loans that can help you, you know, start up something or help you, you know, create this, give you that working capital that you need. If you think you'll have revenue coming, that you could repay the loan and it will be a low interest rate. So there are other opportunities like that that could be coming as well. But yeah, I think this might be something worth trying to apply for.
And it sounds like there's other organizations trying to address this question. So that could be really interesting, actually.
Yeah, we're exploring the model in which to do so, but basically this is one of those instances where we're exploring the whole just transition framework, how to transition from a very extractive economy to a regenerative one, and the retention of a contractor workforce and transitioning them into sort of stabilized employees. How do you take that leap? You know, what structure do you need to sort of model out in order to transition without the loss of some of the workforce, without the loss of revenue, in a way that allows the services to stay within the same neighborhood that it currently exists in? And so we're having these discussions now and trying to model out the language. How do we actually model sort of the language for the structure in answering some of the questions, and how do we because so the framework itself, it's a new model. We're still sort of going through it, and so we're looking at some models of transition for organizations, and how do we retain the same workforce and transition to one that can actually has a structure to provide benefits and stable income.
Mhm.
When you're talking about framework, wouldn't healthcare and these benefits be like probably one of the main items?
Yes, they will be one of the main items. And so it is to give a stable sort of income, coupled with the benefits. But the structure to see how, do we need to make the revenue first, but we need the people to make their revenue first, and they're contractors now. And so you need to pay them. But their income sort of ebbs and flows with the contractors and with the time they have available. And so how do we compete with their contracting schedule and still build the schedule for full-time employees to be retained by the organization?
Okay,
But
I think
paying
we
the
should
wages-
probably move on, just to try to get through the rest of the presentation. And sounds like a lot of folks are fascinated in this idea, and so we can think about other ways to explore this more deeply, maybe through another webinar or a blog post as we learn more about this idea. Do we have any other kind of burning questions to address before we continue? Jara?
I have a question.
Yes, go for it. I'm going through answering in the Q&A. I think we should be able to continue doing that while others, just unmute yourself if you have any other questions. Or Teresa, if you wanted to move forward and then stop at another time, feel free.
I'm going to ask my question really quickly. Direct grantee, the deadline is still September 29th, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And
Yes.
then if my project proposal includes multiple projects, do I need to fill out a project summary for each separate project? And then additionally, if each project, do I need to do a separate budget breakdown and narrative for each individual project?
Probably not. I think if it's something that you could put all together into one project, I think that's what folks are doing. And if you don't feel like there's enough space to describe them well enough, you can add a document with more details. But generally, folks have been putting it all together into one application.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great. All right, I'm going to move on just so we don't run out of time. And I actually have to leave at 11, so my colleagues could probably stay a little bit later, but I won't be able to. So I just want to go over the new Flux system, which is the City of Seattle's grants portal. There is a video on our website that shows you how to register. This is the welcome screen. It's what it looks like when you first go to the website. If you don't have an account, it doesn't show on this slide, but there's a space. So I'm going to actually try to jump off and show you this system. Hopefully you can see that okay. Hopefully there aren't too many boxes showing up in your screen. I know sometimes that's a problem. I'll try to clean them up. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and log out just so you can see the first screen. This is what it looks like. It's seattle.flux.io/user sessions. As I was saying, you hit this button, create an account now if you don't have an account yet. And there is a video that walks you through that. You do need an email address. I am going to log in as a grantee right now. And here's the first screen. As you can see, there are several city departments that are going to start using this system. This gray box over here is the menu that you can use to click through. Grantee portal has some information about this portal and how to use it. There are other departments here you can click through. We are the Office of Economic Development, so click on that. And you can see this is the landing page. You can click back to our website here. There's a live link. There's a little bit of information about the grant. You can click through to the info session. Well, now that we're on the last one, that might not be something to focus on. Here are the application instructions and program guideline document links, and then also our contact information if you want to contact us. And when you're ready to apply, you click this Apply Now button. And you can see it takes a moment to load up. While it's loading, I'll just point out on this left-hand side. Okay, it's ready. So this is what the application looks like. This top blue box up here is a summary. So as you enter information, some of it will show up here, like your title, your neighborhood. So that's not something you click into. Please be aware that the portal doesn't auto save. So you have to click these buttons at the bottom, save and continue or save and close, in order to save your work as you go. Save and continue will save it, and then it will bring you back and you can keep working. Save and close will close it out for you. There's a table of contents where you have some links. You can link down into parts of the application. When you get started, it's important to add the name of your organization or community group. Right now, as the system is getting up and running, this does not populate if you're in here, so you have to add new, click Add New. And then you fill this out. If you don't know your federal tax ID number, if you don't have one, then just select Community Group and then enter in a few pieces of required information, address, etc., email, and click Save. It's telling me that I can't leave some things blank because they're required. There are a few questions. If you just click on the box next to the question, you can either answer or enter your information, project title, amount requested. Most of these with bold are required. Start and end date of your project. As we were saying before, COVID impacts, you can see, I don't know, some folks might not be able to see the characters left for the field, but there are 1,500 characters allowed, and a character includes a space. This isn't words, it's characters. So every stroke is a character. So just be aware of that, especially if you're using a separate document to write it up. If you try to copy something that's too large into the box, then it might not allow you to do that. But you can also just type in here directly if you want. Project summary. Some of these boxes are text rich, so this little bar at the top allows you to bold or create bullets if you like. And then it also shows you how many characters are left as you type. We have a question for the neighborhood. This is a general list of neighborhoods. And if it's multiple, you can select multiple. If it's not on here, that's okay as well. You can also remove them using these arrow buttons. If you want to give more information about the location, if it's not on here, or if you want to talk more specifically about a street corner or a couple places, there's a little bit of space here, not a lot, so it has to be brief. Community supported. Again, you can use the text-rich fields, and this is 1,500 characters. Heidi mentioned the budget. So here on the budget section, to add a budget, you click this plus sign here and a form opens up, and then you fill this out. As you scroll down, you can see that there are certain items in here like salaries and benefits, consulting, that have already been created, and you can just fill in the number there. And then if these don't capture the kinds of expenses in your project, there are spaces here where it says optional, where you can add a certain expense in here and then add the number. And then be sure to click save. And you should see it show up. Unless I didn't put enough information in there, it might not show up. Let's see. Just adding some things.
Let me get in this question before you have to go. When might you be open for in-person? You know, I mean, the libraries are open. I'm not sure if you guys are open. You know, when can we visit the Office of Economic Development?
Well, we can go into the office right now with masks. I don't know if I think folks are not supposed to go into the elevators if you're not from the city. So we could potentially meet you in the lobby if that was something you were interested in. The city is not actually going back to a hybrid in-office until October 18th. So that's after the deadline to apply. So my computer seemed to kind of freeze there. So I'll show you this. So say that I saved my work and I want to go back into it later, then this is where you go. You go to your pending requests. So under applications here, I would go under pending requests, and then I see a request here and I click on it. It's opening it up for me. And now in order to continue working on it, I click this edit button on the top right. And now I can go back in and start putting more information in. And I will show you that this, if I started my budget and I want to go back in and work on it some more, I can click this edit. This little blue square is the edit. And I can go back in and start to add more information. It also shows up down here. And there's also the budget narrative where you describe a little bit more about the budget's very simple here, so it helps to get a little bit more information about what you're thinking on what the budget needs to be. And then here's where you add documents. In order to add a document, you click this plus sign, and then you find your document on your computer or wherever it might be, and then you hit start upload, and uploads the file. Once it's complete, you can click out, and then it shows up here. You can either go back in and add a new version, you can preview it, or you can delete it from here. That's what these three buttons are. And then as I was saying, either if you save and continue, it will save your work and come back in. If you say you need to save and close when you're ready to submit it. And then when you're ready to submit it, you either submit it for full review when you're completely done. You can also submit it for preliminary review, which means it goes to us and we can give you some feedback before you're ready to submit it. But you do need to give us some time for that, so it can't be done on the very last day. And just be aware that if if we don't have time to get back to you, then you might need to, we'll try our best, but just be aware of the deadline and that you get your things submitted on time. You can also withdraw. So if you hit withdraw, then your application will be removed from the application and from the system. It will still be there, so we could go back in and see it if we need to, if you accidentally hit that button. So I think that we need to kind of get back and see if there's anybody who has questions, and I need to actually probably step out.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's so very kind of you.
Teresa, I could stay on for a couple of minutes if folks have questions, so we could kind of wrap it up and close out. And if anyone wanted to stay on and ask any additional questions, I'm happy to stay on. But just wanted to just remind folks, we are here, we're available. I think Teresa's going to go through a last couple of resources that are available, and just encourage everyone to reach out and talk to staff, ask questions as you're working through your grant ideas or proposal ideas.
Heidi?
Mm-hmm.
There's a great question in terms of would it be kind of possible to set a deadline? So what would be the latest? Somebody could submit a draft proposal in the portal for preliminary review.
That's a good question. We could say, what do you think? Is it like a week before Friday the 1st or maybe Monday the 4th?
Yeah, I would say maybe anything Sunday the 3rd by, by 9 a.m. on Monday. Then
Monday the
that kind
4th, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, at the end of the day, it kind of just depends on how many
Yeah.
come in. But I would say you have that gives us enough time, Heidi.
Mhm.
At least those 3 days to go through everything.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So if we can get them in by 9 a.m. Monday morning, we can commit to review them before the deadline. Anything after that, we will do our absolute best. So if there's any last questions, happy to take them. Also want to recognize it's 11, people have their day. So feel free to hop off if you need to. And thanks again for your time and joining us and your interest in the Neighborhood Economic Recovery Fund.